Discover the amazing move that transformed a joke into an inspiring lesson for 1,000 employees. Jack sat in the sterile conference room, the weight of spreadsheets, projections, and the future of his team pressing down like a heavy fog. Budget cuts loomed, and layoffs felt inevitable. The tension in the air was palpable. He had become just another cog in a ruthless corporate machine, his dry humor the only thing that kept him from crumbling under the pressure. For a long time, the sparkle that once filled his eyes had dimmed, replaced with the dull, gnawing anxiety of an uncertain future. As he stared at the serious faces around the table, he felt a twinge of desperation. The familiar chuckle that had often brought levity now felt out of reach. What if they lost their jobs? It gnawed at him, this specter of despair. A small voice in the back of his mind urged him to speak up about the absurdity gnawing at him. But what if admitting the truth cost him everything, the fragile loyalty of his team? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The laughter that erupted from his mouth surprised him. It spilled out uninvited. You know, he began, voice quaking, this place feels like a circus. Only, instead of flying trapeze artists, we got spreadsheets, and watch out, some of the clowns just got fired. As the words left his mouth, a tremor of apprehension rippled through him. Would they laugh, or would silence fall like a guillotine? Then, like a crack of thunder, genuine laughter erupted in the room. The entire atmosphere transformed. Tight shoulders loosened slightly, and the hum of anxiety buzzed with something lighter. He could feel their bond reshuffle, not just in jest, but in shared struggles. Something awakened within him, but just as quickly, a sense of dread surfaced. With laughter came vulnerability, a bridge built to face the dread of more systematic injustices like the promotion snub faced by his mentor. The memory of his mentor flashed through his mind, years spent in servitude to a system that didn't honor dedication. Jack felt anger boil beneath the surface. The illusion of laughter slipped away, leaving him with cold dread as he realized the truths that swirled like a cyclone within him. What if he harnessed this momentum? But daring to speak of that injustice threatened the very unity the laughter created. Would those newfound connections endure if he risked it all? Faces hovered in his mind, his team, their hopes and shared fears echoing, grappling for meaning. Sitting in his dim office, Jack's heart raced with the gravity of this burgeoning dilemma. He could challenge the institution that had overlooked talent, or preserve the fragile community forged through humor. But could he sacrifice the newfound camaraderie by exposing the very culture that suffocated innovation, the culture that clashed directly with the values his mentor lived by? As a voice from the back of the conference room asked, what if challenging the system means losing everything we've built? Jack froze, caught in the grip of insurmountable choices. Would he have the courage to act? The cost weighed heavy against his heart, and yet the embers of determination flickered in the depths of his mind. As the laughter faded, Jack felt a split deep within himself. Half of him longed to embrace the lightness they had shared, while the other half wrestled with a growing insistence. The question lingered in the air. Could he really turn a blind eye to the underlying issues that haunted their workplace? Issues that practically demanded a reckoning? Each heartbeat resonated with the urgency of the decision he faced. He was no longer just an employee. He was a potential catalyst for change. Over the next week, Jack meticulously observed the dynamics of his team. They seemed to float through their tasks like driftwood on a placid lake, buoyed on the surface but weighed down by the murky depths beneath. They exchanged jokes and updates, spent breaks exchanging memes, all while the specter of layoffs lurked just beyond the corporate veneer. He could stimulate laughter, but was he brave enough to provoke meaningful reflection? The moment of truth arrived when he found himself alone with Emma, a bright young analyst whose talent often went unnoticed. Her brow was furrowed, an indication of the pressure she felt. The usual banter between them fell off. Jack sensed the fear shimmering behind her smile. "Jack, have you thought about applying for that new position with the analytics team? I feel like you'd be great for it, she suggested, but her words trembled, a veiled confrontation of Jack's own hesitation. You know what happens when you stick your neck out, Emma, he replied, testing the waters. It's a gamble. And staying silent is a sure way to lose, right? She shot back, her eyes locked on his. Jack's heart thudded, realizing she was right. The illusion of safety within the current dynamics had become a risky gamble, one that could lead to exploitation of their collective talents. Their conversation ignited a fireplace within him. Could he muster the strength to confront the swirling chaos of fear and conformity? Raising his voice against institutional apathy was daunting but necessary. The image of his mentor loomed in his thoughts, a reminder of what he could become if he chose to stay silent. In the ensuing days, Jack began to navigate his role differently. He initiated strategic discussions with his team, veering from the mundane into the meaningful. Each session felt like walking a tightrope, balancing humor with stark truths. The challenge was palpable. Some felt uncomfortable, twitching in their seats, while others opened up, eager to share untold frustrations. I know this is a hard conversation, but we can't ignore the fact that many talented people have been overlooked. Jack began one afternoon, scrunching the fabric of his shirt with anxiety. We need to acknowledge the truth about our environment, otherwise we're just surviving instead of thriving. What surprised him was not only their responses, but the connections that blossomed. Faces animated with acknowledgement, laughter blended with vulnerability, and suddenly they were speaking not only of frustrations, but of potential pathways forward. As this new approach gained traction, Jack felt both empowered and frightened. The camaraderie felt renewed, but with it came a deeper responsibility. It was a tight-knit network they were building, yet it was fraught with risks he hadn't anticipated. One Friday evening, as Jack wrapped up his work, a thought pierced through his introspection. What if he operated not just within the confines of their team, but extended this dialogue into upper management? What if he dared to speak about the culture head-on? Jack hesitated, fear creeping back, reminding him of the stakes involved. Yet, the embers of resolve in his chest ignited into a fire. He could be the voice that risked everything for something deeper, authentic change for both himself and his team. As he reached for his phone to draft an email, one question echoed starkly in his mind. Was he truly ready to confront those at the top, battling for the values he believed in, against a heavyweight corporate system? The air was thick with potential, hovering at the brink of a powerful confrontation. The moment for decisive action had come. As the sun dipped low behind the steel and glass of the corporate buildings, Jack's resolve solidified. He leaned over his cluttered desk, tightening his grip on the phone. The looming decision felt like the edge of a cliff, the thrill of the unknown mingling with paralyzing fear. Yet, within that tension, he sensed a shift. His voice could hold weight and his actions might inspire. The next morning, Jack arrived early, determined to draft the email that could alter the trajectory for his team. It wasn't just about him or the comfort of career stability. It was about reframing the corporate narrative that had entangled them all. He poured his thoughts onto the digital page, weaving his observations and emotions into a cohesive message. Words danced across the screen. It felt exhilarating, terrifying. He was on the edge of a breakthrough. As he hammered out lines emphasizing the need for a more inclusive workplace, a thought struck him. He wasn't merely critiquing the status quo. He was proposing a path forward. He recalled Emma's earlier words and the hope shining in her eyes when she had suggested he apply for the new position. Was he truly ready to become the change agent she saw in him? The decision to click send weighed heavily on him, each second stretching longer than the last. He could easily pivot back to silence, falling in line with the cautious demeanor that had previously defined him. But as his finger hovered over the button, he pictured his team, their smiles, their unspoken relief, the quiet desperation behind their laughter. That image ignited a flame of determination. Jack pressed send, the noise of the digital delivery echoing louder than he had anticipated. Immediately, a wave of anxiety washed over him. What if his colleagues were not ready for this? What if management dismissed his perspective as another rant of discontent? But that fear couldn't outweigh the possibility that his words could resonate, catalyzing a conversation that had long been silenced. In the following days, reactions poured in, rippling through the team like waves on a shore. Some expressed gratitude, and others voiced their own frustrations, turning the tide of discussion from casual exchanges into robust dialogues. There was an electric energy swirling in the office, and Jack felt the stirrings of something he hadn't anticipated, a kind of collective awakening. People were starting to share their truths, feeling emboldened by his initiative. Yet, it didn't take long for the resistance to surface. During a team meeting, David, a senior manager known for his traditional mindset, challenged Jack's email head-on. With all due respect, Jack, this is an organization that has thrived under its current model. Are you certain this change you're advocating for is really necessary? The questions hurled themselves like daggers, threatening to undermine the newest foundations he had delicately constructed. Jack felt the weight of the confrontation, a knot tightening in his stomach. This was the moment of truth he anticipated. Could he articulate his point without stumbling through the very vulnerabilities that had ignited his quest for change? Confrontation loomed large, but if he faltered now, everything would collapse back into silence. Jack squared his shoulders, taking a measured breath. He could retreat into safety or step forward into the uncertain shadows of challenge. This was the crux of his transformational journey. He focused on the faces of his team, each a reminder of the stakes involved. Someone had to advocate for them, to risk the uproar of the entrenched bureaucracy. The lengthy pauses felt excruciating, yet they amplified the urgency of what he was about to say. The truth is, David, we have all felt the weight of our unrecognized talents. The organization can thrive, but not at the expense of stifling its most valuable resource, its people. Change is uncomfortable, but it's the discomfort that fuels growth, both for us and the company. Jack's words hung in the air, a challenge met with silence, grappling to resonate. He had crossed a threshold, but what would the repercussions be? Just as he settled back, waiting for the tide to reveal its response, a thought snagged in his mind. What if David was a mere flicker of the larger challenge he would soon confront? This encounter had opened a door, but beyond it lay an expansive hall of confrontations yet to come. What awaited him on the other side as he stepped further out of his comfort zone? The time had come to face the higher-ups, and there would be no retreat this time. Jack stood at the threshold of a reality he had never truly envisioned. The office felt claustrophobic, the air thick with tension as murmurs began to ripple among his colleagues. What had started as a flicker of courage in his earlier email now felt like a wildfire threatening the very existence of his comfort zone. He needed to prepare for the inevitable pushback that had only just begun. In the following days, he embarked on a meticulous journey of preparation. Jack sought out allies, those who shared his vision for change, perhaps fearful but equally aware of the stifling atmosphere they endured. Their conversations pulsed with enthusiasm, ideas flowing freely. The thrill of potential blended with stark trepidation as he understood the magnitude of what lay ahead. Every chat felt like gathering ammunition, his allies' words sharpening his resolve. In this cocoon of shared ambition, he began to reflect on his identity. Who was he becoming? No longer just a silent contributor, he was morphing into a catalyst. Yet with each stride forward, the shadows of doubt lingered, whispering to him in quiet moments, was this transformation sustainable? Days blurred into each other, and finally, the day of the pivotal meeting arrived. Jack felt the weight of it pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. He dressed meticulously, each button fastened with purpose, each tie knotted with determination. This wasn't just about clothing. It symbolized the armor he needed to face the impending scrutiny. As he walked into the boardroom, the polished table and imposing walls seemed to close in around him. His heart raced, but beneath the pulse of anxiety, an unexpected clarity washed over him. Each breath was deliberate. Directly across the table sat David, flanked by other executives who exuded authority. Jack's nerves twitched momentarily, but he tempered them with the resolve that had burgeoned within him. He had come too far to allow fear to dictate his path yet again. As the meeting commenced, Jack began to articulate his thoughts. He shared insights gleaned from the feedback of his colleagues, presenting it not just as a mere list of grievances, but as a blueprint. His words morphed into a compelling narrative that illustrated both the need for change and the potential rewards of fostering a more inclusive workplace. He narrated anecdotes of struggles faced by teammates, fortifying each point with undeniable human elements. Yet, as he spoke, he could see David's posture rigid and dismissive. The senior manager's brow furrowed with skepticism, fueling Jack's determination. As Jack concluded with a call for a pilot program to assess the potential benefits of an inclusive approach, silence enveloped the room. Before the executives could respond, Jack sensed the urgency in his gut, the need to advocate even harder. We have a responsibility not only to the organization's success, but to our people. We owe it to them to explore this change. The atmosphere thickened as he awaited the replies, each passing second an eternity. Finally, David replied, "Change is a risk, Jack. Are you willing to stake your position on this?" The challenge hung, heavy and mocking. Jack understood that this was more than a question about an idea. It was a test of his commitment. He could justify his failures or embrace the risks he had once feared. "Yes," Jack replied, the word flowing with newfound conviction. "Risk is inherent to growth. Why not let our people be the true measure of our progress? If we don't evolve, we stagnate." The eyes in the room shifted, gauging his confidence, and Jack realized this was a pivot point. Every heartbeat synced with the realization that he had grasped the mantle of leadership, even if tenuously. As the meeting fluctuated with responses, some encouraging, others dismissive, Jack's thoughts simmered with the prospect of what lay beyond this critical moment. How would the higher-ups respond to the ripple effect he had started? Even as he left the boardroom, Jack felt a slight shift in the energy surrounding him. He had braved the storm, but another awaited a confrontation with not just the management, but also his self-doubt, demanding resolution. What would it take to guide them through the next level of resistance? And could he rally the resolve within himself to continue facing the churning seas of uncertainty? Jack's pulse quickened as he stepped into the break room, the earlier adrenaline of the meeting still coursing through him. He watched the muted TV, where office gossip now danced in the air. His colleagues, some engaged in idle chatter, carried on as if the boardroom discussion hadn't just altered their collective trajectory. But Jack felt the weight of change pressing down on him like the pressure before a storm, swirling with intensity and potential. His body moved on autopilot, pouring a cup of coffee, but his mind raced. He had taken a significant risk, yet uncertainty lingered like a shadow beneath his conviction. Did he truly believe in what he had proposed, or was he merely riding the tide of enthusiasm? The question clawed at him as he tasted the bitter brew, reminding him of how easy it could be to retreat back into the comfort of anonymity. As he took a sip, the break room door swung open, revealing Mia, one of his earliest supporters. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she approached. "Jack, that was incredible. You stood your ground like a pro," she exclaimed, patting him on the back with an enthusiasm that nearly knocked the coffee from his hands. The words fueled a small flame of confidence within him, but a flicker of doubt stifled it. Did it even matter? He questioned, feeling the need to deflect her praise. "I mean," David hardly looked convinced. "Of course it mattered," Mia replied fervently. "You set the stage for something we've been needing. This isn't just about one meeting. You've lit a fire under us all. We can't just let one person's skepticism define our potential." Her enthusiasm scratched at a surface of hope that he had hardly allowed himself to feel. They continued to talk, sparking ideas that had been dormant in the corners of Jack's mind. Together, they began brainstorming how to reinforce the momentum he had created, pulling more colleagues into their vision. Jack realized that this momentum was critical not only for the workplace, but for him personally. Every conversation he sparked was a step away from conforming to the silence he once accepted. Yet, he also understood that galvanizing change was a multifaceted endeavor. It would require strategy and orchestration, far beyond simply delivering a powerful speech. He suggested to Mia that they outline a tangible plan, a framework for the proposed pilot program. As they began drafting outlines, Jack felt a shift in his own approach to leadership. He'd gone from merely advocating change to actively cultivating it. The more he poured into his ideas, the more he felt them, almost emanating from him as if they possessed a life of their own. Yet, the deeper they delved into their plans, the more Jack sensed an insidious fear creeping back in. What if management dismissed their efforts? What if they faced outright hostility? Every new resolution he penned was tempered by a gnawing awareness of potential backlash from those resistant to change. Mia seemed to read his thoughts. "Hey, if David pushes back, it's not a failure," she said, her voice firm. "You've opened the door. Now we just need to be ready to navigate what comes next. Maybe it's all about resilience. Her words lingered, echoing more than any strategy could. Resilience was critical, but could he truly summon it against an environment that had historically met challenges with indifference? Weeks turned into a blur as Jack poured every ounce of energy into strategizing, forming a coalition of those supportive of the changes. Discussions shifted from general complaints to actionable steps, transforming what had once been whispered grievances into a rallying cry for accountability. The project gained traction, but so did whispers of dissent. Certain colleagues took to voicing their concerns openly. Their skepticism echoed in the hallways. Jack learned quickly that dissent was loud but necessary to growth. As the noise grew, he found himself standing at another precipice, confronting the stark reality that his leadership would lead to confrontations he could not sidestep. The day of the follow-up meeting with executives loomed, and as Jack paced his apartment, he wondered if he was strong enough to stand firm against the inevitable pushback. He took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. This was not merely about proving his worth. It was about championing an essential cause. Within each ounce of doubt, a flicker of determination ignited. He realized that the time had come to face David and his colleagues again, and with this realization came a new surge of resolve. What would it take to fortify his defenses and ensure that this time, he wouldn't bend? As he prepared for battle, Jack knew only one thing. His next move would determine not only his future, but the destiny of the changes he sought to bring. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting streaks of gold across Jack's desk, illuminating the hastily scribbled notes and colorful charts that had become his lifeline. Each mark represented a thought, a strategy, a vital piece of a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. Today, he was no longer the hesitant participant in the workplace drama. Today, he stood at the forefront of a potential transformation, ready to embrace the chaos. As he sipped from a fresh cup of coffee, he felt the warmth seep into his veins, blending with the adrenaline that coursed through him. He replayed the meticulously structured presentation in his mind, each slide crafted with intention, designed to counter the skepticism he anticipated from David and others. Fortune favored the bold, but what if today's boldness backfired? The thought lingered, heavy and persistent. Driving to work, Jack focused on his breathing, attempting to steady his thudding heart. Each inhale and exhale felt like a meditation, a moment to prepare for the challenges that awaited, yet the vibrant hues of determination were dulled by whispers of doubt that crept in uninvited. What if they grilled him with pointed questions? What if David's skepticism smothered the flicker of enthusiasm he believed was building? Arriving at the office, Jack sensed an electric atmosphere. Colleagues hurried through halls with an urgency that felt palpable, whispers thick with expectation clinging to the air. He spotted Mia across the room, flame-haired and fierce, energetically gesturing as she rallied others in conversation. He felt infused with her vigor. She was steadfast against any headwind they might face. Yet that steadiness also forced Jack to confront his own insecurities. He took a moment in front of the mirror in the restroom, staring deeply into his own reflection. What did it mean to be a leader? To Jack, it meant embracing vulnerability, the acknowledgement that he might falter. He had worn a mask of assurance, but beneath it lay a simmering wave of anxiety. Still, when he thought about the unanimous support that had emerged, soaring amidst whispers of discontent, he felt a warmth blossom within. In the conference room, the board had assembled, representatives from every corner of the company, their expressions a mosaic of curiosity and skepticism. Jack took a deep breath. This was not merely a presentation. It was a declaration of intent, a manifesto born from struggle and hope. He began to speak, fluidly connecting each point, leveraging data that showcased the necessity for change. He painted a vivid picture of what the future could resemble, not just for the company, but for each individual within it. His voice dripped with passion as he envisioned collaboration over complacency, engagement over indifference. Yet as Jack navigated the questions, maintaining poise while facing David's pointed darts, doubt relentlessly gnawed at him. Critique darted like arrows. He had to remain steadfast, showing resilience that he hadn't thought was possible. Each inquiry from the executives was met with a counterpoint tinged with hope and data. Slowly, Jack began to realize it wasn't only the responses that mattered. The way he presented himself, authentic yet assertive, was equally crucial. But then, David stood, his figure casting a formidable shadow over Jack's momentum. "Your enthusiasm is commendable," he said, touches of sarcasm underscoring his words. "But we cannot ignore the strain this may impose on our resources." An undertone of challenge echoed through the room. Jack felt the tension warp the air. He could sense the resistance building. The weight of expectation settled heavily on his shoulders. It would take something extraordinary to shift this dynamic. So he chose to confront it directly. "And what if we do nothing? What future lies before us as we avoid confronting the problems?" His question hung between them, cutting through the tension like a knife. The murmurs erupted, colleagues exchanging glances, and for the first time, Jack perceived a shift in the room. They were not merely spectators to a duel, they were potential allies. Could it be that the very act of speaking out, of facing David directly, was what they needed to witness? With each moment that passed, Jack felt his resolve solidifying. He might have been afraid, but he was not alone. The realization washed over him like a spark in the dark. He had ignited something more significant than self-advocacy. This was about a shared journey. As David began to reply, Jack's heart raced, his mind alive with the realization that he was prepared for whatever came next. Yet the uncertain terrain still loomed ahead. Would his boldness inspire the team, or would it plunge him further into conflict? The moment hung in the air, a precarious balance teetering between doubt and brilliance, awaiting its resolution. What path would they choose to tread? The air buzzed with vibrations of uncertainty as Jack absorbed David's impending response. For a heartbeat, he caught a flicker of puzzled expressions among his colleagues. It was an unspoken truth. Many shared his fears, though cloaked in silence. Jack's conviction flared, no longer rocked by doubt. He felt the room start to shift beneath him. David cleared his throat, but before he could unleash his skepticism, Jack sensed an opportunity. "David," Jack said, voice steady amid the growing tension, "what if we see this potential strain as a vital investment in our culture? Our people are our greatest asset, and right now, it feels like we're treading water instead of swimming towards solid ground." That single shift in perspective rippled through the assembly. Faces brightened and murmurs of agreement rustled like autumn leaves. Jack's chest swelled with hesitant pride. This was it, the embodiment of leadership he sought. He continued, seizing the momentum. "Imagine a workplace where every employee feels seen and valued. It's not merely about action plans or budget allocations, it's about creating a dynamic environment where each voice matters." As Jack spoke, he noticed Mia nodding vigorously. It was as if her energy pulsed through him, offering validation. His thoughts crystallized around the clarity of purpose. This wasn't a solitary endeavor. It was about collective growth and resilience. Change is uncomfortable, but it is also necessary. We can shape our path in ways we haven't yet imagined. The question isn't whether we should take risks. It's how willing we are to embrace those risks together. The words flowed with a newfound authenticity, each utterance strengthening his grip on the narrative. David's brow furrowed deeper, undermined by Jack's persisting engagement. "That may be true," he retorted, "but you still haven't addressed the logistics. Enthusiasm won't transform reality." Jack paused, feeling the challenge creep back into the room. But instead of recoiling, he leaned in. "What if we develop a pilot program? Just a small initiative to introduce changes incrementally. We'll measure the impact and adapt. I'm talking about rolling up our sleeves, engaging firsthand." Energized, he leaned forward, his gaze locking onto David's. "We owe it to ourselves and each other to at least try. If we don't act, we risk stagnation, and that's a far greater strain." Silence enveloped them for a moment, the weight of Jack's challenge pressing against David's authority. The electric tension in the air felt charged with expectancy, and Jack's heart raced. "I'm proposing we pilot this with a select team," Jack elaborated, speaking directly to those who looked intrigued. "Let us experiment with our creativity and commitment. We can assess feedback and adapt as needed. Together, we can transform hesitation into opportunity." David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the tide of opinion starting to turn. Jack sensed the alliance taking shape among his colleagues. They leaned forward slightly, the barriers of skepticism beginning to crumble. Still, an undercurrent of tension buzzed between Jack and David, but the challenge had shifted. Jack felt the intensity of the room transform from skepticism toward a cautious hope. The time had come for a decision, and Jack could feel its weight pressing down on him entirely. Would they rally behind this initiative, or would David's skepticism bury it before it had the chance to unfold? As David opened his mouth to respond, a flicker of resolve ignited within Jack. He understood now more than ever that this wasn't just about winning an argument, it was about crafting a vision. A vision where he had a hand in sculpting the future, a future that unfolded from the ashes of hesitancy. Just then, the sound of his phone vibrating broke the tension, pulling Jack momentarily from the pivotal moment. He glanced down at the screen, witnessing an unexpected notification, a message that could shift everything. He fought a wave of curiosity and dread as he wondered what revelation awaited him. What crucial news lay behind that buzz, and how would it impact the precarious balance they had just begun to establish? Jack felt the pulse of the room dim as he hesitated. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, a harsh reminder of the outside world that threatened to intrude upon his carefully constructed moment. He glanced at the screen. It was an email notification from the company's HR department. Urgent. Overhaul of employee feedback systems required. The subject line alone sent a shudder through him. His mind raced, processing the implications. Did this mean the management was already considering changes on a broader scale? Would David dismiss his proposal in light of this impending crisis? Jack wrestled with the decision to confront this new reality now, aware that the moment needed his complete attention, but the urgency of the email clawed at him. Jack! David's voice snapped him back to the present. The cautious hope in the room began to dissipate, shifting back toward unease. Jack took a breath, forcing his focus. I believe we should discuss how we can leverage this potential initiative alongside the feedback overhaul. It's not just about the program. It's about creating a culture of openness. If we're already addressing employee feedback, let us ensure that our pilot program complements it and enriches our mission. David narrowed his eyes, perhaps seeking any crack in Jack's armor, ready to pounce on his uncertainty. And if the overhaul leads to a completely different direction, where does that leave your pilot? You could be investing energy in something that gets scrapped before it even starts. The challenge landed squarely on Jack's shoulders. Suddenly, it was no longer a matter of merely pitching an idea. It had become a test of his conviction. If he backed down now, he would not only lose the initiative, but possibly even his colleagues' respect. The stakes elevated sharply. Jack pushed back against the momentum threatening to slide him into retreat. David, this is about adaptability. Every successful company I've studied embraces change, not just reacts to it. I'm asking for a chance to innovate in tandem with these upcoming changes. We need to be proactive rather than reactive. If we're responsive to feedback and agile in our approach, we give ourselves the freedom to grow. He could feel Mia's presence, her unwavering belief amplifying his strength, helping him project not only confidence but clarity. David's expression shifted, though the hints of doubt remained. Jack took a calculated risk, asking, "What do you think is most valuable for our team? The comfort of the familiar, or the challenge of a growth mindset?" In that moment, he knew the future of the proposal rested in David's hands, but it also lay in his own ability to convince. The room held its breath, caught in the tension of decision-making. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, David leaned back, the frown deepening into concentration. "You may have a point, but I still want the logistics ironed out before moving forward." Jack seized on this tiny concession, reading it as a glimmer of hope. "Let us work together on drafting a plan with measurable outcomes. We'll ensure all data collected aligns with both our pilot and the feedback overhaul. A collaborative effort is our best option." The air hummed with an invigorating tension. Could they truly turn this meeting into a leap forward? Jack felt a swift swell of ownership, a personal conviction rising in him like a tide. As he took mental notes of the path ahead, Jack realized this battle was not just about initiating change. It was unveiling his own leadership style. He had more qualities than he'd previously recognized: beginnings of resilience, adaptability, and a steadily escalating vision for success. Suddenly, the weight of his phone in his pocket felt like less of a distraction and more of a catalyst, a reminder of external challenges that could become tools for internal growth. But as he pondered this newfound revelation, a sense of urgency rang through him once again. What awaited in that email? The course it could potentially set could derail everything he was trying to establish. Would his instincts propel him to capitalize on this moment or lead him astray? Just then, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching, and he turned to see Mia striding forward with purpose. Her expression was one of determined intrigue, as if she held the key to something that could shift the entire paradigm. "Jack, we need to talk about what comes next," she said, urgency lacing her tone. "There is something I've discovered that ties in directly with your proposal, and it could change everything." His pulse quickened, energy surging through him. What revelation awaited him this time? Would it fortify his plans or put them at risk? The stage was set, and he realized he was standing at the edge of possibility. Jack's heart raced as he absorbed Mia's words. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a sandstorm. His instincts screamed for clarity, yet the potential of her revelation hung in the air, tantalizingly close. "What did you find?" he asked, tension lacing his voice. Mia stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with excitement, as if she had just stumbled upon buried treasure. "It's about our current feedback system. I've been looking at the data we've gathered over the past 6 months. There's an underlying trend here that suggests a disconnect between employee perceptions and our initiatives. It's almost systematic." Jack's curiosity piqued. This could be the insight he needed to reinforce his proposal. What kind of disconnect? Employees feel their voices aren't heard, despite the existence of feedback channels. It's not enough to just collect data. We need to show real changes based on that feedback, she explained. By integrating your program with this understanding, we can create something profound in actual dialogue instead of just a survey tool. Jack leaned closer, absorbing her perspective, a blend of apprehension and exhilaration washing over him. "So, we can adjust our pilot to not just gather feedback, but actively respond to it? To demonstrate that change is occurring because of employee input?" "Exactly." Mia nodded, her enthusiasm infectious. "Imagine if we could present case studies where real feedback has led to actionable changes. If employees see their contributions directly impacting decisions, they become engaged stakeholders instead of passive participants." As Mia spoke, Jack envisioned a dynamic cycle of engagement where feedback blossomed into tangible reform. Could they craft an environment so compelling that employees not only felt their input mattered, but would also eagerly seek out opportunities to provide it? The idea sparked something deep within him, a feeling of purpose he hadn't fully explored before. But alongside this newfound enthusiasm, doubt began to rear its head. What if management doesn't buy into this? What if David's focus on logistics means he'll overlook the emotional aspect, the gravitas of real employee experience? Mia paused, her expression shifting to one of determination. "Then we show them how it creates value, Jack. We stack it against core company objectives: higher engagement, better retention, productivity boosts. If we can tie feedback outcomes to tangible business results, we'll cut through the skepticism." Jack was silent for a moment, processing this strategic approach. He envisioned presenting the data, illustrating a narrative of uplift, rather than simply critiquing past patterns. It was possible, necessary to connect the human aspect of feedback with business strategy. He felt the door to his leadership opening wider. "I've got to connect with David again," he declared, a renewed urgency in his voice. "We can't let this idea fade. We need to structure our approach to ensure the pilot doesn't just coexist with the feedback overhaul, but actively invigorates it." As he and Mia strategized, Jack realized he was no longer merely a participant in a proposal, but a proactive leader defining the framework of this initiative. The old Jack, afraid of failure and rejection, started to dissolve. In its place stood a leader animated by a vision rooted in collaboration and adaptive growth. Yet, as he scribbled down ideas, the weight of that urgent email from HR lingered in the back of his mind. The anticipated overhaul wasn't just a foil to his proposal, it could redefine the company's very culture. What if HR had discovered something even deeper in the data? What if their interpretation of the current feedback mechanisms led to a radical shift in how they operated altogether? Mia's voice broke through his thoughts. "We need a solid plan for the first phase of the pilot. Let us structure it clearly to highlight how we will integrate feedback into every iteration. I'll prepare the data analytics section if you want to focus on the engagement strategy. Sure, Jack replied, envisioning the cohesion they could bring together. But we also need to anticipate potential pushback from management once they see this intense focus on change. We'll need a narrative that turns apprehension into opportunity. As they leaned into the challenge, Jack sensed the pulse of determination fueling his ambition. An unwavering desire to explore further propelled him forward amid uncertainty. He felt he was on the cusp of hitting a breakthrough, yet part of him remained wary of what lay ahead. The looming changes from HR haunted his thoughts, threatening to overshadow everything he was building. They had to get ahead of the curve and shape the conversation. Standing at the brink of this personal transformation, Jack knew he needed to act before the tide changed against him. The forthcoming meetings would not only test his professional acumen, but would force him to reconcile his emerging leadership identity with the tumult of impending organizational adjustments. Just then, the notification sound from his phone jolted him back to reality, cutting through the moment's gravity. He hesitated for only a heartbeat before reaching for it, dread coiling in his gut. What new tidings awaited? What would it reveal about the future not only of his proposal, but of the entire organization? The uncertainty loomed large, a negotiation of ambition and fear that Jack had yet to navigate fully. With bated breath, Jack opened the email from HR, the anticipation mixing with anxiety swirling in his chest. He scanned through the text, and as he reached the end, a wave of realization washed over him. The company was indeed restructuring its feedback systems, but rather than stifling his proposal, this initiative aimed to align closely with the very changes he'd been advocating for. A sense of alignment and purpose surged within him. Realizing this was an opportunity, Jack turned to Mia, barely able to contain his excitement. This could actually work in our favor. If HR values employee feedback as much as we do, we can present our pilot as a prototype for how to integrate these systems together, making the culture responsive and accountable. Mia's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Yes, we can elevate the conversation from logistics to genuine employee experience. We need to frame our proposal with this in mind, emphasizing how these changes can enhance engagement. This isn't just about fixing a problem. It's about innovating together. Fueled by their shared energy, they executed a robust plan. Jack meticulously drafted the sections outlining how their pilot program would foster an inclusive work environment, actively utilizing the upcoming feedback overhaul as a cornerstone. He envisioned a culture where discussion and input were not only welcomed but celebrated. Days turned into meetings, and Jack confronted David again, this time with fortified confidence. "David," he began, his voice steady as he prepared to unveil their structured plan. "We've linked our pilot program with HR's feedback initiatives. By integrating our approaches, we can set a new standard for responsiveness that can engage our employees on a deeper level." David's initial skepticism morphed into curiosity as Jack elaborated on their findings. Each point Jack made resonated with clarity, weaving together the data from HR with the human element they had experienced on the ground. The fear that once gripped him began to dissolve, replaced by a vibrant sense of purpose. As Jack concluded, he took a moment to gauge the reaction of his colleagues and higher-ups. The atmosphere had transformed palpably from tension to tentative interest. David leaned forward. "If we align this pilot with the new feedback system, we could cultivate a responsive culture. But this will take buy-in across the board." "Yes," Jack responded, his heart racing with the thrill of the exchange. "Together, we can create a movement that energizes the company. It's about modeling the way forward, not just in policy but in practice." The discussions continued, blurring the lines of resistance as Jack and Mia garnered support from peers, turning their vision into a collaborative reality. Slowly, the tide shifted. The notion of change stopped being seen as a threat and began to blossom as a challenge to embrace. Weeks later, Jack stood in front of his team, seeing their faces reflect hope and determination. They had constructed a framework together, evidence-based, employee-centric, and resounding with purpose. The pilot program was officially set to launch, a tangible testament to their combined efforts. As Jack addressed the team, he felt a deep pride swell within him, a recognition of his personal evolution from a silent participant to a vocal advocate for change. The transformation wasn't just in policy, It was in the values that resonated throughout their team. It's not enough for us to seek feedback. We must engage with it. Let us show our commitment to fostering a responsive culture, one where every voice is heard and respected. Together, we will redefine what it means to thrive here. With that, Jack's heart swelled with a sense of fulfillment. Not only had he embraced his role as a catalyst for change, but he had also uplifted those around him. He recognized he was no longer merely defending their talents, but actively harnessing them for the betterment of their workplace culture. That day marked a pivotal moment. Jack felt a solid confidence in his conviction, the gratitude of his colleagues, wrapping around him like an empowering cloak. He had not only conquered his fear of confrontation, but had transformed into an agent of meaningful change. As he left the office, a new sense of purpose filled his steps. It was no longer about avoiding the specter of job loss or stagnation. It was about forging a path where the brilliance of each individual was recognized, valued, and celebrated. The journey had tested him, but in overcoming doubts and choosing to elevate the collective, he had achieved what he never thought possible. Today wasn't just another day. It was a triumphant declaration that individual voices mattered, and together, they could reshape their destiny. Now is the time for you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference in spreading these powerful narratives. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Join the community of those committed to the journey of personal transformation. Your support fuels this movement toward growth.